This is not good, I thought to myself. I was already having enough trouble just dealing with her and that freaking bird. And now there's a giant stone behemoth? What the hell am I supposed to do about this? I thought frantically. You seem to be a little lost for words, Rebecca said, perched atop this behemoth's shoulders without a care in the world, as I saw the bird join her, swooping around the top of that thing's head. At this point, it really looks like you've hit a dead end. But you know what? I'm feeling generous. So I'll give you a few seconds to let this settle in. Your imminent defeat, that is. Unless, of course, you've got some new trick. Something a lot more impressive than throwing a rock or whipping up a tool out of metal. Because I'm afraid to say, if that's all you've got, you're in a bad state of situation, she shouted down to me. And she wasn't wrong. Kevin, I heard Nylea's voice call out. I have a suggestion. Your opponent continues to stack the odds against you. More and more, she's summoning these beings to aid her in combat, and they've been working effectively. There's no reason to suggest that this giant will be any different. Based on its size, I can only assume that its main function is all-out destructive power, as well as being a defense. I don't think attacking her is going to be all that easy. So, you need a way to even the scales. Frankly, if you were more capable, the amount of the king's power that you have at your disposal might be enough to do it. But you're lacking in experience. You've only had the king's power at your disposal for a month or two. You have far from mastered it, and even the amount that you have at your disposal is quite limited in comparison to what you could have farther down the road, given time to collect. All of these things work to your disadvantage. I'm gonna be honest, it doesn't look good. But there is one thing that could possibly change the tide of this conflict. However, quite frankly, it's an untested method. My second bearer, the second host that I had, was only just starting to experiment with this use of the king's power. Whilst experimenting with it, its limitations, what they could do with it, they found what amounted to an unknown use of the king's power. A way to create something unlike anything that we've created before, that no bearer of the king's power has ever created. The results of this experiment were incredible. The power yielded from it, exceptional. However, there are still countless things that we don't know about the process. The invasion of the Endure halted all experimentation, all training and study into it. Had to stop. There was no time for it with all the conflict. So, in the long term, this technique could have unforeseen circumstances and effects, things that quite frankly we don't understand enough about to even take a guess at what could emerge from it. The only thing that I'm absolutely sure of is the power of the technique. It could possibly give you exactly what you need to win this fight. Well, Nylea, I replied, thinking to her, a game changer right about now, I'd say it's just what I need. Whether it's risky or not, at this point, I'm out of slick tricks. I don't think a small, underhanded tactic is going to be able to pull this one out. All the odds are in her favor, and they just keep stacking. It's already a 3-on-1 fight, and none of my opponents are weak. Risky or not, if you have a way to get me out of this, I'd suggest you give it to me. Otherwise, I'd say we're both finished. As you wish, Nylea replied. The technique that I'm about to show you is far different from the way that you've been using the king's power up to this point. It's far different from the way anyone's ever used it. But it is functional. I can't say what's going to happen in the end, what effects this might have, but I suppose we're beyond the point of questioning it. This technique allows you to give sentience and life to the mucus. What? I replied, thinking to her. Hold the phone. What do you mean, give sentience and life? And how in the hell would that benefit me? It's exactly as I said, Kevin. The technique we're about to use will turn whatever liquid steel, as you call it, that we use it on, into a feeling, breathing, living entity, all of its own. It takes advantage of several key abilities possessed by the king's power. First and foremost, its ability to retain kinetic energy. The telekinetic energy that you produce is absorbed by the king's power. And this is how the ability effectively works. How the liquid steel, as you call it, is able to shift, change, and move around so freely. It's part of what makes it powerful, how it responds to your thoughts so effectively. But on top of that, the liquid steel that you produce possesses its own memory. Every time you utilize, move, or change the mucus into anything, anytime you've ever done anything with it, from the moment that it was produced, it began learning, absorbing your telepathic wavelength in the field that you produce. Just as you learn to control the fluid using your telepathic wavelength, the fluid learns right back, becoming more responsive, learning your unique telepathic wavelength. However, this is only a slight bit of information that it gains. Normally, all you give is a base order, turning thought into action on the fluid's part. But the technique we're about to use pushes that to the absolute limit. Basically, you'll gather an amount of the liquid steel, something that you think is sufficient. Take in mind, the greater the amount you use, the more powerful what you create will be, and the higher its mental capabilities. This technique works by bombarding a portion of liquid metal with a constant and erratic telekinetic wave that fluctuates rapidly, and a massive amount of it. No small amount will do. The amount of telekinetic energy you're going to have to put into this is going to be exhausting, but the process won't complete unless you can meet the standard, the telekinetic demand. I didn't think that you'd be capable of doing it when you first started, but by this point, I think you've gained just enough to achieve the process. But once again, Kevin, I warn you, what you're creating isn't like the rest of the liquid steel. Once you complete this process, it'll be alive, no longer subject to your will or demands, no longer a simple tool obeying the will of its master. It will begin to learn at an exponential rate, depending on how much fluid that you include. My first bearer only used very small segments to do these tests, so the intelligence was limited, but no small portion is going to do it. You're going to need a large amount to pull a win here, and so whatever you create is going to be very intelligent. How much so, I can't say, but I'd say this is our only hope. So, make your choice and gather as much liquid steel as you think is necessary and prepare yourself. Things are going to get intense from this point forward, both physically and mentally.